Today on CityCast Las Vegas, we got an extra special episode for you. It's a dispatch from our very first live event at the opening of the Beverly Theater this past weekend. Co-host Vogue Robinson and I get to sit down with two local authors, food writer Kim Foster and YA author Veeda Bybee. We all try to figure out why it's so damn hard to get it right when writing about Las Vegas. It's Wednesday, March 8th. I'm David Figler, and here's what Las Vegas is talking about.
Okay, what's today, David?
Today's Saturday, March 4th. It's 1 p.m. We're at the corner of 6th and Bonneville.
We're inside the new Beverly Theater. We're here with Veeda Bybee. We're here with Kim Foster. And we're here with this sexy audience. I'd take y'all anywhere. Right. All right, let's do questions, David.
Crazy applause is very sexy. I love that.
All right.
Well, we're going to be talking about writing from Vegas, writing about Las Vegas. And here is the first question. How long do you need to be in Las Vegas to write about Las Vegas?
Ooh, that's like, okay. I think the longer you live here, the harder it is to write about it.
Oh. Why is that?
I was thinking a lot about people who are not here all the time and are able to have a sort of eye on observing the city and making comparisons to where they live. Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes that creates sort of an interesting thing. Like, I think about when I wrote this book, I kind of freaked out when we had to talk about Las Vegas and writing about Las Vegas, because I don't think my book is about Las Vegas. Mm-hmm. Oh. And so I feel like my book could sort of be set anywhere, and that it's not really about Vegas at all. And so I because I just live here, and I just get in my car every day and park my car and take my kids to school and do all the things. And so I don't even know if it's really a Vegas book or not.
But some of the sections are definitely placed in Vegas.
It's set in Vegas for sure. But the question is whether it's really a book about Vegas or whether it's just a book about humans, and those humans happen to live in Vegas.
Oh. Veeda, what do you think about that?
It's interesting. I've lived here twice, so altogether it's been almost 9 years. So I feel like I'm almost to the point where I feel like I'm from Las Vegas. Like, my family is growing up here. But there is this thing with Vegas when it comes to writing that people have a different perception of it. It's just what draws everyone here, but not necessarily like the everyday 2 million people who live in the city. And so I think, like, I like how you mentioned, Kim, the longer you lived here, the harder it is. Because I think we get past like, there's the entertainment here, but there's also like normal families that contribute to, like, there's dentists, and like people who work at the grocery store and people who take their kids to school. And like, I want to make sure I get that right as well.
Yeah.
So that's always a really good point to bring up too.
Yeah, and I think, like, for instance, I wrote about the Smiths on Sahara in Maryland, which my hairstylist refers to as murder Smiths. And but I actually love that Smiths. But the reason I wrote about that, so I wrote about this thing in Vegas, but the truth is it's just a lightning rod for talking about the questions that I wanted to ask, which is, like, who deserves to live here and who can live here, and where do people buy their food, and what does it mean that some people don't want to buy their food there, because, and why don't people want to buy their food there, and what does it mean? So for me, it was just a lightning rod, but that store could be in Detroit, it could be in LA, it could be in a little tiny town in Minnesota. It's just a way to talk about the sort of the human condition.
Which I think is really important to bring up, that, people who live in Las Vegas, we are all humans. We're all the same as everyone else,
Are we?
That's the real question. I mean, okay, David, what do you think? How long do you got to live out here before you can write about it?
More than a weekend, less than your whole life.
Yeah.
So I'm barely in that little swath there. What do you think, Vogue?
My baseline was 10 years, which I'm about to hit. When I think about it, though, I think for those of us who are transplants, I think it's once you stop saying, I'm going to go home for the weekend. Like once you stop going back to where you used to live and calling that place home is when you've gotten closer to the place where you can say, Vegas is what you claim, and you can claim it with pride. So like there were years where I was like, nope, California native, I don't believe in winter. Like it came out of my mouth often. And I'm getting now to the point where I'm like, sear me, baby. Like go ahead and both sides.
I'm gonna amend my answer. I think you need to be here long enough that things that you fell in love with aren't here anymore.
Like what?
Oh, how'd that go?
My husband's face just now. My husband was like, yes.
Because that's so I often say this because it's easier to fall on my own cliches and come up with original thoughts all the time. But welcome to Las Vegas. Don't get used to the things you fell in love with. And that's true about a lot of things, but not everything. But I think that one tilling of the soil, that one long season of, wow, that nightclub I love, that coffee shop I love, that building that I love, that casino maybe, that junior high that my kid went to is no longer there anymore. And now something new is in its place or something isn't in its place. That to me is long enough to be a person who claims that they could write about Las Vegas.
But do you feel like things happen, things go away quicker here? Do you think things are more transient? Not just people, but I mean things.
Yeah, I mean, things do turn over pretty quickly. One of my favorite places in all of Las Vegas was here for 3 months.
Damn.
What
place was that?
It was a nightclub called, for you old timers, it was a nightclub in the Venetian called Venus. Very hip places where Richard Cheese and his band first got their like big break, big start. The Fontini Sisters, I think is the name of if Laura Herbert was here, she'd correct me immediately. But there was a burlesque troupe that played in the side room. It was a little tiki room. It had the unfortunate luck to open on 9/11/2001. So that was a 3-month example. There are things that have, the Enigma Coffee House. I mean, I could go down my own personal list, but I'm sure how long have you been back here, Veeda? Has anything disappeared from the first time that you were here?
Actually, yes. As you were talking, I used to love to go to Bocce Burger. And and we moved back, and I think it might have been around for a month, and it just kind of tanked and went from there. So that's a really good point. I'm going to think about that.
Because that is a Vegas
I'm from
thing.
Vegas now.
May I interject?
You could write about Vegas now.
I want to interject. So when we talk about the disappearance of things, do y'all think that contributes to why it's so hard to write about Las Vegas?
Ooh.
What do you think?
Well, I'm a children's book writer, and I feel like there's a certain narrative that Las Vegas brings to people's minds, and it very seldom is for children, you know? So I think like because there is such lack of books about kids in Las Vegas, you know, there's no precedent to set, so it's just harder. And I wish that wasn't so. So, you know, it makes it difficult to be like, oh, this is set in Las Vegas, and other people, you know, I've had responses from editors or my agent at times where they've been like, oh, I don't know if everyone can relate to that because it's, you know, no one lives in Las Vegas, or they think Las Vegas is certain. I know, so
no one lives here.
Yeah. Like, no, there's so many kids who actually live here. We have like, you know, one of the biggest school systems in the nation, and I think it's really, you know, there's something here, and I hope to be part of that, you know.
Wait, what was the question again?
Why is it so hard to write about Las Vegas?
Look, I think it's because a lot of other people have their ideas about Vegas, and they're very, very important to them and connected to them. And I'll tell you, when we first moved here, we were basically living at the Cosmopolitan because we were going back and forth, and my husband was producing a show. And my only understanding of Vegas was the Strip. And I hated it. I went to Circus, and I remember taking the kids there and doing the arcade, and I texted my husband and I said, this place sucks so hard. We have to get out of here. And he was like, oh, no. And then he did this whole thing where he tried to get me to fall in love with Vegas by taking me to all these amazing places and like taking me out to the rocks and the mountains and doing all this stuff.
The rocks.
And then I went and the rocks, and you know, and so and then we went and like we took the kids to Kim Bevington's art classes, and she lives on 6th Street. And so just going into her house, which is like this mid-century modern, like beautiful, like gorgeous, you know, house.
That street's amazing.
That street is amazing. kidding. You live on there.
Yeah.
And the thing is, I got to see this other side. So I think what happens is that people come to Vegas and they have this itsy bitsy little tiny idea of what it is, and then they have a hard time letting that go. And so when you write about it, maybe they don't see what you write because they're too busy seeing their own impression of it. That's my feeling.
When you present things to the outside world, what sort of challenges are there in dealing with editors and publishers presenting Vegas work?
So my publishers were really clear that they wanted me to write a book that was a national book and that wouldn't be seen as a particularly Vegas book. And
Ouch.
So, well, that was part of, they wanted everyone to read it, not just people who were interested in Vegas or not. So they were very specific about that. And anytime that I became too granular about Vegas, they were on top of that with edits.
Do you think that would be the same for an author from New York or Los Angeles or Chicago or other big cities? That they would, a publisher or editor would say, don't make it so Chicago, don't make it so New York?
I think so, because I think I know my publishers, St. Martin's, did like a Detroit book that didn't really, I mean, might have done really well in Detroit, but didn't like get a lot of national acclaim. And so I think that, you know, would you read the Detroit book? Well, maybe if you were interested in Detroit, or you had family who lived in Detroit, or you came from Detroit, or you visited Detroit a lot. But if you didn't have a connection, you might not be really interested. So they were like, Vegas is great. We love that. It's really sexy. But I'm not writing a sexy book. So it really doesn't matter. I mean, my book is not sexy. So, and I'm not writing a sexy book. So it wasn't about casinos. It wasn't about gambling addiction. It wasn't about, you know, all these things and these trappings that maybe they thought it could have been about.
When we think about, okay, how do we add Vegas into our writing? And you think about there are poets who are poets of place, right? And that's the heart of what they write. But I know for me, I'm like, I write around Vegas, but really I'm a people, like I'm a writer about human beings and interaction. But then I think about the other writers in Vegas who are writers of place. I feel like Sin is a writer of place, Jennifer Battisti, Rodney Lee. Those are all writers who really dig into the soil of what Vegas is. But have you all ever tried to write about Vegas and just failed, like crumbled it up and was like, ooh, don't look at that?
You know, I think as we're talking, I'm realizing, so I have a short story coming out on the end of the month. It's in a anthology collection called Calling the Moon, and it's a collection of different BIPOC authors, and we're writing about a menstruation. And so my character is actually from Las Vegas, but I don't say it on the page because she and her family, they go hiking, you know? So the actual story is taking place like outside of Las Vegas, but everything that she experiences, like she's from Las Vegas. But I'm realizing I don't actually say it on the page. And I'm thinking I need to do that more often. So thank you for bringing that up. But yeah, so that's one way I guess I've tried to do it. Like she's from Las Vegas, even though it's taking place in Yosemite, you know? But
How about you, Kim?
I found coming from the East Coast, and maybe this is just me, but I found writing about sense of place to be a very Western thing. I could be wrong about this, but this is just my experience. But like writing in New York and being in New York City, people might talk about the city or write about stories about the city, but nobody talked about writing a sense of place. Like I've never sat on a conference or seen a conference where people talked about writing about a sense of place. And I think it was really startling and really fun for me to like read like Claire Vaye Watkins or like even like Amanda Fortini's writing a book, and I heard her read part of her book, and just to be able to hear people writing about the place is really amazing. But I feel like it's a very West Coast kind of thing, and I could be wrong about that, but that's just my experience.
Right. When I think about film, I think about like Spike Lee, and it's like New York is always a character.
Yep.
Sex and the City. They don't even bother to tell you it's New York. You know what the city is. Like it's the boisterousness.
They don't talk about it as sense of place. They just talk about the city as its thing.
They don't give you the title, but like there are so many other little things that I feel like let you know where you're at. So like even though it's not like lauded as a genre, I feel like it's very clearly there in like the way of life.
Well, maybe it's because we're newer, but you mentioned Claire Vaye Watkins, and one of my favorite recent like Las Vegas is genre of just one sentence.
Yeah.
I'm going to just read the Claire Vay Watkins, and this is from her last book, I Love You, But I've Chosen Darkness.
It's a great book.
Which is a great book. And then there's this one line in there about Las Vegas. It says, you have to be careful in Las Vegas. The place will be whatever you need it to be. Right? Snap, snap, Claire Vay Watkins.
Yeah.
So is it hard to kind of synthesize or boil down things about Las Vegas as a writer in Las Vegas?
So I actually wrote a poem a few years ago, and I just put it on the internet, just like on my Twitter somewhere. It's buried there. But I had a friend who passed, and I just put a picture because I was thinking about her, and I was thinking about creosote. Am I saying that right? You know, it's like when it rains, that amazing smell that really only happens, it only happens like here in Las Vegas, and it's like this beautiful, like, it was just really symbolic of, you know, this like grief I was going through, but yet there was this like, this refreshing of hope too. So I think Las Vegas can be extreme that way. And so I think about that where, you know, like we have this desert, but we also there are things that are beautiful about it. You know, like look, we're at this weekend right now for this grand opening of this great theater. And so bringing to light more of that I think is needed, you know, like, you know, we have this art, the art here. And so anyways, I was thinking about things like that, so.
Thank you for sharing that story about your friend.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So just kind of on the theme about writing about Las Vegas or writing from Las Vegas and getting Las Vegas right, our friend Amanda Fortini recently gave a talk about her forthcoming book of stories, essays. She said basically, you know, there's generally two categories of people who write about Las Vegas. There's the parachuters who come in and almost invariably get something wrong or have their own narrative that they want to press. And then there's the people who are from here who are probably way too protective and don't want to do some of the truths or myth busting for whatever reasons. So as a person who's writing about Las Vegas, which one do you think you're closer to, or is there a third category? Was that okay, Amanda? Was I close?
Yes, but I do believe there's a third category.
Okay, well, let's see how you do on this
What's
one.
the
What
third
is the third
category?
category?
No, don't give her. Don't share someone else's work.
What's the third category, girl?
Really?
Yes,
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
I just think you have to try to carve a middle path down, keeping one foot in and one foot out, and seeing things objectively, and you know maybe occasionally you're protective where necessary, but you know it's like, but mostly you're clear-eyed and you describe reality, which I think Las Vegans appreciate. We like honesty.
Ish.
I'm going to say it again just for the sake of recording.
Yes.
So the third category is people who kind of are able to stay in the middle and be clear-eyed about both sides.
She said 1 foot in and 1 foot out.
Committed to describing reality, even though as a writer that might cost you something.
Because that's what we do.
All right, Kim.
Okay, given my three choices, which I think are great. I'm probably, so I don't have the 1 foot out, 1 foot in that like Amanda does or other writers have, because I know you are between Minnesota and here.
Montana.
Sorry.
But I mean it as a psychological.
Right, a psychological thing. But I also think that being able to escape and get some perspective is also a nice thing to be able to have. I do feel like I am defensive about Las Vegas, about the people here, and that I'm probably not as in the middle as maybe I would like to be, because I do feel the need to care for the people here. Oh. And maybe that makes me not as, you know, logical an observer or truthful as an observer.
I'm going to agree. I think until I see more of just more of a variety of writing of Las Vegas, because right now there's just so much more of the parachute writing. There's just a one way. So until I see more of that, then I think maybe I would, you know, I could have more of a 1 foot in, 1 foot out. But I would like to have more of appreciation of the city before I could have more objective. I don't know.
That's basically in the middle. When I think about, I think I have maybe 2 poems about Vegas. And one was about the process of moving here and dating white men that were not that great. And then finding my spouse that is a white man and is great. And just kind of like the shifts of my understanding of myself and that feeling like this place kind of sears you into whatever it is that you really are, that Vegas will just burn the BS off of you, and then whatever you are is whatever you are. What's one thing you think has to be in a Las Vegas story?
Ooh.
The weather. It's such a part of us, you know. Like right now, I'm feeling so great because it's beautiful outside. Like it's coldish, but I'd rather take the cold than the 120 degrees sometimes. That's extreme. But yeah, I think the weather is she's a part of Las Vegas.
A character?
Character, yes.
In your forthcoming YA novel set here in Las Vegas, does weather come in?
Not as much because it's during the fall to the spring. So, but actually it does because
It's beautiful.
It's beautiful, and they're teenagers, and it's funny because when it's like August and it's still like even in the hundreds, they wear like the sweatshirts and the hoodies. But when it's actually time when it's warm, then they start wearing like t-shirts all around. So it's funny how it does come into play.
Nice detail.
What about you, Kim?
Just going off on what you said about the weather, just the extremities of living here. Everything is an extreme, and I find it I find it like living in New York in the sense that it's not like living in New York, but there's the extremes of New York and living in this big city. And then there's also similar extremes here. And part of that is the weather. But it just feels like there's a lot of extremes here. And I think you have to write about that if you write about Vegas.
Yeah. I think now listening to y'all, I think grief actually like belongs in anything you write about Vegas. If you've lived here long enough to watch something go, like I remember the grieving period for the beat, like all of us being really, really upset about it being gone, and then feeling lost as a community. Like where does our open mic live if we don't have this place? And then like the writer's block kind of becoming a different kind of home for some of us.
That's great.
So yeah, I think grief.
Because I was grieving the reading room at Mandalay Bay. That was such a great space. And then it was gone forever. And then Scott and Drew showed up, and it's like, reading room what? It's like you can remember. I think my thing that has to be in every story, either explicitly or implied, is juice.
Which juice?
Power. The power that flows through. Them that gots and them that ain't got.
Yeah.
That is a dynamic that is a recurring theme about this city. Right. Is that, the quest for juice or power or connection, whether it's to get comps or to elevate oneself or to, even get to the point where your legacy matters, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And then the contrast with people who are, for lack of a better word, juiceless, without that connection, struggling to get along. I think that is at the core of real Las Vegas stories. So I'm going to go with juice.
That is not what I think about when I think about juice. I love you, David.
Thank you guys for coming. Thanks to Kim.
Thank
David.
To hear the full panel, including our audience Q&A, head on over to our YouTube channel. We'll link to that in the show notes. And now, a microdose of news. Under a proposed law discussed this week in Carson City, Nevada schools would have to install cameras in special ed classrooms. The idea, says sponsor Republican State Senator Scott Hammond, is to safeguard nonverbal special needs students who can't report abuse in the classroom. This bill would limit access to the recordings for this specified purpose. Next, revive your youthful sneer and jam a giant safety pin through your head because the Punk Rock Museum opens Friday here in Las Vegas, the birthplace of punk, or the home of seminal punk bands like, well, there were more than a few dragging amps out for shows into the dusty desert during the heyday. So for whatever reason, it's here and it's opening. According to their website, ticket prices start at $30. Unclear if there's any anarchy in the LV discounts. That's all for today here on CityCast Las Vegas. If you missed the live taping, look for more in the future. They were so much fun. And if you enjoyed this episode, why not tell a friend? Rate the show, leave us a review, and subscribe to our morning newsletter. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Take care.